just want you to know that many of us on this council have applied for school board before. Only one of us made the cut back in the day. And again, you're doing something that's thankless, it's tough, it's rough, but we know that you, just like the other candidates, are doing it for the children you want to have the best school district possible in the city. And for that, you have our respect, and you have our time, and you have our attention. And what we'll do is, I don't know, are you going to do an opening statement or a closing statement? What's your choice?
I think I'd rather wait to see for a closing statement.
Okay, fine, good.
Do a wrap up.
Well, then we're going to start with council member Driver and then go on down, and they'll have questions for you. So, and we'll go from there. So the chair recognizes council member Driver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Blair, welcome, and thank you for being here and being willing to throw your hat in the ring. It's a daunting thing to do, and we're impressed
So I've
that
been
you're
hearing,
willing to
so
serve.
learning more and more. Thank you.
Well, I was impressed with your resume. I don't think I know too many Harvard graduates, so very, very impressive, and thank you so much for your service to our country. That means a lot.
Thank you.
I noticed in your responses to questions, when you talked about things perhaps that we should do better or be on the lookout for, you mentioned technology in the classroom. Can you elaborate on your opinions on that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as I've talked to other parents and I've had kids come home, technology has done some wonderful things, especially during the pandemic. I mean, I don't know how we'd have survived it without all the technology to try to keep the students engaged with the teachers. In fact, I think Hoover did a fantastic job. As we come out the other side, anecdotally, I've seen a few things that have caused me to be concerned. And as I've talked to other parents, I've heard similar stories. So videos, all the material that's online, there's tons of things a teacher can use to help educate our kids, and it's fantastic. If there's a concern, it's that sometimes we leverage that too much, and we forget when our kids are in the classroom, they need to talk to their teacher and not watch a video about what they're being taught. And I know that's happening. I have kids coming home talking about it. Math is one of the things. I'm a math science guy, so I taught at West Point Physics, so I kind of have an idea how that has to go. And I really have learned, especially when you deal with cadets who don't want to be in your physics class, but everyone has to take it, you learn very quickly you have to be able to engage with the students to get them excited about the material they thought they couldn't care about. If a kid walks in and pulls up their Chromebook and hits play on some kind of training session, they're just not engaged like if a teacher is at the board or walking through objectives or going through. And I'm not saying that's happening all over. I'm just saying I think it's something we have to be careful of, because sometimes when things are really useful and helpful, we lean on them too much and we fall away from things that can really make the difference. And part of, I think, what we're trying to get out of our students in our classrooms is that engagement with their peers, with their teachers. They want to know that teacher cares about them. How does a student really strive when they're in that classroom if they're not sure the teacher isn't fully engaged with them? Because if the teacher isn't, then why should they be? And again, anecdotal, I'd be curious once I was on the board to kind of ask those kind of questions, ensure we're putting things in place that we aren't doing that, making sure that our teachers, who are fantastic, wonderful teachers, are being encouraged to not just slip into technology, but continue to be engaged in eye-to-eye contact and showing them how to, really teaching them how to learn, how to break big problems into little problems, because that's what they're going to face in life.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
What qualities do you think we should be looking for in our next superintendent?
Well, there's, in this day and age, in the size of this school system, you really need somebody that can come in and have the strength of character and the focus and the diligence to keep us on the road we're on, but then quickly identify where are areas where we can make some quick improvements. Because I think we're a great school system. Whenever you come into a new organization, in the Army they teach you, don't just come in and change things immediately. Come in, do an assessment. Because you never know, if you change too fast, you may break something and not realize it was going just fine. You just didn't give yourself time to check it out. So someone with a strong character, confidence, but also the patience to come in and just get on the ground a little bit and see, but then be decisive. Once he or she identifies, hey, this is what I see we need to do different. This is what the community is looking for us to do. Okay, board, let's rally together. Let's get pen to paper, and let's figure out where we're gonna be in 5 years from now. And if we're all gone, where's the school gonna be in 10 years? So we need someone who's strategic, someone who can think big, someone who wants us to bring in programs that really are innovative and interesting and continue to help our kids be engaged, but also be able to handle operational and tactical issues. We don't need a micromanager, but we need someone who's comfortable with dealing with the various issues across the board. With 18 different schools, There's gonna be tons of challenges. I have 14 different facilities that I manage, and every day it's a different challenge. So you have to be flexible and nimble. So that's a lot of different qualities, but I think you need that whole package for, if we want Hoover City Schools to continue to be the school system it is today and even grow as we bring more people in and bring more people to this great city, we have to keep looking forward.
Thank you. Can you give us an example of a time when you had to work with people who had different views and positions than you? And how did you handle that, and what was the result?
Yeah, so I think it's happened in pretty much any organization you're a part of. You come in and you find people don't see the world the way you see it, or you don't understand why they don't understand what you're saying. I'll give an example of my time in the Army. I was tasked with bringing multiple national labs together. And in the government, you fight for resources. And it's kind of dog eat dog. I mean, you get it or you don't. And those who don't get it can't fund things for the next year. And when you're talking different labs at different geographical areas, they have different backgrounds, different interests, different things, comprised of a whole sort of different ideology, but also just how they approach things. And I knew we weren't going to make it work if we didn't get everyone on the same page. So really worked hard to getting buy-in from each organization. I think that's part of it. You have to go find the stakeholders. Who are the ones that are willing to come online with you and work hard to find how it's going to work? And that takes time. Who are the people that are going to help you get there? And then you bring it together and say, look, we're not going to agree about everything, but what can we agree to and how do we get there? So what we did is we sat down, we laid out, this is what we accomplished, these are the resources we have, this is the time frame we have to do it in, who's in? Okay, if you're not in, why? What would it take to bring you in? What would I have to do to make you feel comfortable that you were going to have a fair shot at this? And we were able to come with 3 national labs and brought them together, and we really were able to accomplish something pretty special for the organization that fundamentally changed the way we do business and some of our strategic planning. And it was a great learning lesson for me because it really highlighted, they're all from different places, but at the end of the day, I think people they have a positive intent. They want to be successful and they want to make projects be successful because they know that together the synergy we can create actually has better outcomes than if we do it by ourselves.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Sweeney.
Mr. Blair, thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
Great to see you again. Just a couple of questions. What do you see as the primary work of the board members?
So I think there was 19 different responsibilities listed in that document gave, so you could come out and list it, but I really think it comes down to, how do you look at it when you come in? I think a board member first and foremost has to be strategic when they come in. They're not there to fix a problem at a school. They're not there to address any one particular thing. They're coming in thinking about the big picture. So I live over, and my kids are in Spain Park and Barry. Okay, great. But when you hit the board, you have to open up the aperture. It's not about that school, it's about the entire school system. So I think it's important as you come in, you do that. The second thing is, I think the superintendent and the board have to have a good working relationship. There has to be a trust, there has to be engagement, there has to be feedback, both directions, because we're not always gonna get it right. So I think we have to be a resource for the superintendent, but when we bring in the superintendent, we also have to trust his judgment or her judgment to make sure that it's collaborative. So that's how I'm looking at it. I know there's a bunch of individual things from establishing policies to looking over emergency procedures to, making sure we have good communication processes. I mean, there's a litany of things that you can fall into, but it's that integration between us and the superintendent, as well as being strategic about what makes sense for the whole school system as we move forward and where do we want to be in the future.
Thank you. One more question. I know there's been talk of, Dr. Fowler has 1 year left on his contract. What would you look for in a superintendent coming in after Dr. Fowler?
Well, I think Dr. Fowler's done a fantastic job. And not being a part of that yet, I don't know what conversation's been had. I think I'd start by sitting down with Dr. Fowler and saying, look, I'd like to get to know you better, and let me really tease out what are the traits that have helped you be successful. Because right now I could throw out all the words and the blurbs and the adjectives, but truly I want to go to someone that's had success. And I'd like him to give me a couple references of who he think's been successful. Where has he seen superintendents similar size to our organization, similar challenges, and then I'd like to go try to chat with them. And I know we don't have all this extra time, so you put yourself on a clock. All right, we have this time period, we want to do this. Maybe you divvy it up to different board members. You go talk to that one, you go talk to that one, come back, let's talk about what were the same characteristics we found in all of them. So that's how I would approach it. Strength of character, vision, strategic mindset, ability to get in, pull their sleeves up, all that, of course. But I think you go find where success has occurred, try to figure out how that worked, and then go see if you can replicate by finding people with similar traits.
Okay. Last question, Chairman. Could you support a board decision you did not vote in favor of? Why or why not?
I would have to. It talks about, I think the very last one talks about no board member has authority on their own. You have authority as a board. You know, being in the military, you learn that sometimes you're given orders you don't particularly agree with, but you still have to execute. And I think a board, how can they have trust if they aren't able to disagree in a constructive way, knowing that when they leave that room or when they go out, whatever decision, whatever the vote was, they all have to support it. And that takes a maturity that, you know, I think you develop over time, because that's not a normal trait, right? When you don't get something you want, you kind of can throw a little fit. But the board has to be integrated enough that even if I don't get the vote I want, I still have to go out and I have to make sure, okay, great, we still have to make this happen. How does me coming out being negative help that? I've got to come out, be a part of the solution, see how we can continue to make it better. Maybe there's a way to refine it down the road that we hadn't considered. That's a win-win for everybody. So I think that's how I'd approach it.
Thank you, Mr. Blair.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Murphy.
Thank you. 3 questions for you. And I'd love to hear your input on this one. Being a West Point grad and serving our nation, I had the opportunity to serve on the school board with another West Point grad, Hoover,
Okay.
as well, too.
That could be good or bad, depending on the West Point.
Yeah, I like military folks. I mean, my grandfather was World War II, so he
Fantastic.
raised me, so it was very structured. So it leads me to my question. 2004, from roughly 2014 to current state, Hoover has had roughly 5 superintendents, if you count interims. So that's a short period of time, but the troops in the field is 20 and 30 years that they have been there. That amount of change, how will you as a leader find out what is going on without breaking chain of command? Now, I do know that generals and even high-ranking commanders, what they do go in the field, and the troops expect it, and also as a way of life as well, too.
Yes, sir.
I don't know what's the case now, but how would you find out, and staff as school teachers to CMP workers to everyone, how would that look to you?
Well, one of the ways I found successful, both in the military and in the positions I've held since leaving the military, is you have to get on the ground and talk to people. And you said, how do you do it without breaking the chain of command? Well, say I wanted to go to a school, I go to the principal, say, hey, I'd like to meet with some of your teachers. You have to establish that trust where, look, I'm just coming to collect information. I'm not coming to find anything wrong or anything bad. I like to ask questions. In my current organization, I started by saying, I'm the why guy. Why do we do it this way? And it's not to find, it's not to, I gotcha. It's, if we don't ask that question on a regular enough basis, how do we know we're doing the right things? And if you come back and this is your answer, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay, let's do that. And then I think what you do is, you got to get the trust of the people on the ground. So when I was in the Army, I was in tanks. As an officer, I'd go down to the motor pool late at night, see who was still working the motor pool. It'd be a young soldier. I put my coveralls on. I sit there and start breaking track with the soldier. And, first they had to get over like, what the heck is an officer doing down here? But I found that's where I could really get a vibe for what's going on in the unit. Hey, what's going on? How's PT going? Are you married? Are you not married? Well, how's that going? Are you getting what you need? Simple questions that it doesn't lead any kind of negative intent towards supervisors or management. Is to try to understand how is that soldier perceiving their situation? Because that can give you clues as well. If that soldier thinks their life is not good because of A, B, or C, then I walk away going, how can I make that better? And then I shape the message that when I go to the leadership, I don't come down and say, Private so-and-so said this, which means you do this. I come down and say, hey, look, based on some conversations I've had, it sounds like we may be struggling with fill in the blank, morale, physical fitness, people aren't getting enough time off. How can we develop a process to make sure that that's not a gap? And I've had people, where did you hear that? It doesn't matter where I heard it. What matters is I think it's something we need to look at. And what I have found is it teases people's minds to have a little imagination. It tees it up. And as you come together in that group, then I'll come back and maybe resolve it. And it percolates back down to the unit. That soldier's like, man, I was heard. And nothing happened to me. Well, I can make a difference. And it creates trust. And then when you see that person again out and about, they're like, hey, sir, how you doing? I'm like, hey, how's work going? How's this? Boy, it's great. This is working out. Remember what I told you? They're almost surprised like how it happened because it's a very delicate thing you can do. How do you make change without breaking the chain of command? And there's an art to it, but when you can do it right, you can make a whole bunch of difference for those folks.
Perfect. All right, last two questions I have. How would you support an unpopular decision, although it's going to anger parents, but it's the best for the students?
So when you say anger the parents, I assume you mean, getting emails that aren't very positive, maybe being, come up to out in public. I think that's where you have to be careful. As I've talked to a bunch of people about this role, those kinds of things happen. I think you have to put a thick skin on. I tell my kids, sometimes when people give you a hard time out and about or say something negative to you, we were out on spring break and a bunch of kids went by my kid and they said something not so nice to him. They didn't know him from anybody. They just were being kids that aren't very nice. And he came home all upset. And I said, son, they don't know you personally. They only know just what they saw in that snapshot. So I think I'd like to tell you, and it's hard because when people come after you or they get harsh or mean, you get defensive. But I think you have to step back and go, they're not really attacking, in this case, Rex Blair and everything that makes me me. They're attacking that snapshot of what they saw in the decision I supported, or what they think I supported, even if I didn't. And you have to have that thick skin enough where that's okay. You want them to feel comfortable because worse would be they don't say anything, and they don't say anything, and they don't say anything, and that breeds resentment and anger. And sometimes when that blows off, that is 10 times worse than if you just dealt with kind of that initial frustration. So I would like to say I'd be big enough to take it, turn around, go back to the board, go to the superintendent and say, hey, this was the feedback I got today, not particularly positive. What can we do to address it? Should we address it? Or do we carry on because we think we've made the right decision?
And last question, define equity to you in education.
Equity is a word that gets a lot of people thinking about a lot of different things. I think it's a challenging thing to describe simply because equity is the quality of fair and impartial, which sounds great. Yeah, I want fair and impartial. But then you go to the next step and say, well, what does fair mean to you? And now you got a whole nother set of things. So equity to me is a little bit of a word that I try to stay away from just because I think there's so much connotation to it. But I think the crutch of your question is, how do we address to make sure that all the kids we have in the school system have the opportunity to be successful? At least that's what I'm looking for. I read, a bunch of different things as I came in, and with all the different things in society and even what's going on down in the Alabama House where they're looking at putting a bill through or not through, it's definitely a topic that comes up. I think we have to be careful about what do we mean by equity or what do we mean by equality. Sometimes we switch words in and out. Equality is the same value, something that's equal. And I think that's an easier thing to wrap your head around, but I also get why sometimes people are like, okay, fine, they took the same test, but did each student have the fair opportunity because maybe they didn't get as much extra help in the background as somebody else? And I don't have a clear answer to that, but I think what we really need to strive for is we start with, let's make sure they have, I'll say equal opportunity, the same opportunity to take the classes. And right now, I see that. Let's make sure that if a student's interested in taking AP, but maybe they're not ready, well, is there some help we can give them if they self-identify, hey, I want to take that AP math class, but I don't know that I'm ready for it. Can I get some help? As a school system, I'd love to see people who are motivated like that. Let's help them out. Making sure that people with different languages, I saw the packet I got, 53 languages. I mean, that's as diverse as it gets. I mean, I was in DC and I don't know if my kids had people in the school with 53 different languages. I mean, think about the lessons our kids are gonna walk away from. They're sitting in a classroom next to different kids from all walks of life, having the same experience of dealing with these tests, the hard tests, the easy tests, the tough teachers, the teachers that they like. And it's that experience that I want to make sure is the same. And if we can make that experience the same, then we can actually do the next thing, and it's in our mission statement, exemplary character. If they're having the same experience, now we can pour into them, let's get that exemplary character that we've said in our mission statement. That's what we want, so they can be the best they can be. And I think that's where our focus should be. Let's set the conditions to give them that same experience. If someone needs help, let them come online. Parent can come online. Hey, I want so-and-so to have this opportunity. They're struggling in math, or they're struggling in English. Can you help? I think that's a fair thing for a parent to ask a school. And then we have to figure out, can we do it? How do we do it? I don't know if Barry still does it, quite honestly, but I had a daughter who, they used to have a thing at Barry Middle where you could stay after school and it was kind of a study hall. And anybody was welcome to do it. And she was struggling in math. We said, guess where you're going? You're going to stay there. And she had an opportunity to sit there and ask those questions and get some more feedback, and her grades improved. So those are the kind of things I would look at. So let's make it the same in terms of the experience. And then when we're there, now let's give to the students. Let's have that relationship with them. Let's show them what we want them to be in terms of that character, because character trumps anything else. Not just when they're in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, middle school, when they're adults and they're out living their lives and raising their kids. If they are people of character, that's how we're going to get change.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Blair, Hoover City Schools, I believe, is a employer of choice. We always want to be the best teachers. Some of the stuff I sent you in the packet, as well as the other candidates, show you what we rank nationally. A great place for teachers to be at. But unfortunately, we're losing some talent. They're being plucked away by other districts. I think last year, approximately, we lost like 30 units. And I'm a big believer, as my colleagues are, because our kids go to schools in Hoover City Schools. We want to have a great student-to-teacher ratio. I believe money should be spent more on boots in the ground, not in the central office, not a slap at those people that are there, but I don't want to be top-heavy. So as a board member, what would you do? What's your philosophy on how to retain that talent, but also to acquire that talent?
Well, we kind of have that challenge right now. I mean, we just went through 2 years of COVID, and I'm in healthcare. We had talent going all over the place. When nurses are being offered the opportunity to make a whole lot of money to travel, and they're at a place where they can, their kids are grown up or their kids are in college, and they're some of your most senior nurses, and they go. It leaves a hole, and it's almost irreplaceable. It's certainly not without a bunch of time. So I guess what I'll touch on is how we went after that. So we really looked at, well, why are we losing them? Well, money's part of it. Money's always going to be a factor. I think a big enough number pulls just about anybody, quite frankly. So how do you try to offset that? Well, we went and we looked in our clinics. I was like, okay, what are we doing in our clinics? Are we creating the atmosphere that I would want to work in and day out? Do I feel like I'm committed to my teammates? Do I feel like that if I leave, I'm letting them down? Do I feel that camaraderie? Do I feel that connection to my patients? And in this case, to your students? Because I think what you want is you want them not just to see that they're coming to do a job that day, but it's something that they're seeing when they're investing in the future, and it has enough value where they're willing to put off a little more money to go change school systems. Because this is what I tell people, whatever problems and challenges you're facing here, you're going to face it wherever you go. The difference is I'm listening. Help me make it better. Let's do this together. I can't always throw more money at you. Love to, but there's not infinite resources. But what can I address? Tell me. How can I make it better? What irritation is causing you to even think about leaving this fantastic school system? And what we found is when we started to do that, we started having fewer losses. And as we brought people in, we made sure we shared that message. So now the new folks are hearing that story too. And what it started building was that synergy where now we've gotten a lot closer to turning the corner. It's still a struggle. There's a as you try to bring talent in, to backfill the really great ones you lost. I think what that is you go out and you prove if you're going to be a teacher somewhere, you want to come to Hoover City Schools, and this is why. Benefits are great, but I don't always think benefits are the biggest deciding factor. Show them the classrooms. What makes us different? Why do you want to invest in these students? What kind of long-term impact will you have if you come to our school system that you may not be able to do somewhere else? Is it something we're doing that's more innovative? Is it more opportunities to see different things? Is it the ability to do this or that? Those are the kind of things I would look for. What makes us stand out? So that when they talk about money, they talk about this. Yeah, but you're not seeing the whole picture. Look at all these other things you can get here. You can't get anywhere else. And try to make sure they're considering the whole picture and not just the dollar bills and maybe the frustration of that day.
Good answer. Thank you. Chair recognizes co-chair Mr. Posey.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and all of them I want you to think about your time as a Hoover City School student, because you graduated 2 years before I did from Hoover City Schools. And keep that in mind as well as your experience as a parent when you answer these questions. The first one is, I would like for you to think about your time as a student in Hoover City Schools and then your 4 children's time as a student and compare the two. Has the school system improved since 1993, having been formed in 1987? Has the quality of education improved, and why has it improved?
Well, we went from what, 5,000 something to 13,000, so more than doubled in the last, since 1997. Or 1987, I guess is when it started, right? I think actually, when I started 8th grade at Simmons, I think that might have been the first year there was a Hoover City Schools. I didn't know that, so thank you for that information. That was pretty interesting. So, you know, the size does make a difference. I think sometimes we run the risk if we get too big, and like Hoover High is a very big school with a lot of students. I think we have to be very careful about the numbers game in terms of when does a student become a number, no longer be Joe or John or Jim or Mary or whatever, right? Because then they're not getting the experience I would want them to have. I didn't feel that when I was at W.A. Barry, I didn't feel swamped and like a number. I knew my teachers, they knew me, I knew my extracurriculars. I mean, they knew my name, right? And I felt like they had time for me. So I think I would say if I had, in a concerned sense, where I'm not sure as you grow, you're always gonna have to overcome that. In some ways, you can beat that by more boots on the ground. But where have we improved? Well, without a doubt, my kids are getting a heck of a lot more opportunities than I had. You know, you have the basics, you have the sports, you have the fine arts, but even what those are doing are far supersede what the opportunities were when I was here. The different things you can be engaged with. The curriculum for me is the most interesting because I don't recall having 1,000 different AP classes to take. I don't recall having all these different opportunities to, like at Spain Park, they have the different academies you can tag into. You know, the international baccalaureate, I think, that's over at Hoover High, that wasn't there. We have teachers that have been around a while, so they've seen where we are and we've seen where we've come. And I actually like longevity in a lot of sense because they can kind of think about what we used to do and what we're doing now. And there's a richness to that you can't make up by bringing brand new teachers. So by the sheer nature of having that growth and the maturity of the system, I think you're generally going to get a better opportunity because your teachers have more experience. I mean, I saw some of the accolades that were in the information. I mean, goodness gracious. I think over 700 something of our teachers have a master's degree, if I recall right. I mean, that's incredible. So I have to believe that that's a huge difference from what you and I may have experienced. The other part is the world has changed a lot in that time frame. And what I'm seeing at schools is my kids come home and reflect on who they're interacting with, the things that are coming up. It isn't the basic stuff I remember talking about. I mean, these are real issues. Dad, I didn't understand this was said at school today. What does this mean? Wow, where did you hear that? Well, Dad, why did someone say that and do this? There are conversations happening in our schools which are good. I think they're important. If they can't have conversations with their teachers and their peers to try to understand what they believe and then come home and do a sounding board off their parents, well, we want that. I'd rather them do it now. In that complicated world we're in now, a much more complicated world, from the technology to the cell phones to the many things, has helped us do a lot of things better, but I also think it helps us better prepare our kids when they get out there. So it absolutely, the stuff they're doing now, it would have been fantastic, and there's no doubt in my mind they have more opportunities now than I ever did and when I graduated in 1993.
That was great, and I completely agree with you that those academies and everything make a huge difference. My second question, you touched briefly on legislation, and one of the pieces of legislation that's going through right now through the State House during the session is this Price Act. The Price Act will take and provide funding. So you own a house, so your property taxes will go to your school of choice. If your child goes to private school, your money will go to private school and not exclusively to public school as it is now. With that in mind, how do you as a board member work with the rest of the board to make sure that Hoover City Schools stays at the high level where they are and is able to battle off, losing a good amount of revenue to a private school system to the point where the private school system maybe builds a high school or expands or whatever? How do you keep that quality of education high so people want to continue to send their kids to the public school versus a private school?
Well, I think I would say a couple different ways. I think some are more straightforward than others. So the first is you have to make sure you have cutting edge, forward-leaning, top-tier curriculum, technology, engagement, where you can show parents, look, if you send them to our public school, this is the opportunities that they get. Graduation rate, college opportunities, trade school opportunity, RC3, what a tremendous program that is. One of my sons went to RC3. I actually had 6 kids that went through the system. 2 are in college now, both having great success. I think we have to be very loud and clear about what separates Hoover City Schools from anything else they're thinking about putting their kids into. So I think I would start there. The second thing is I think we as a community have to be engaged with our neighbors. You know, when you travel around as much as I did in the Army for 20 years, here and there, here and there, here and there, sometimes you bump into good school systems, sometimes not so good school systems. And, you know, like you want the best for your kids. You're just like, hey, should we do private school? What do you think we do? And we kind of landed on, it was important for us that our kids remain in a public school because that was going to be the best opportunity to help them interact with a broader set of people. But also, I wanted to make sure my children had the opportunity to help other people, to be a part of that community. So how do we get our neighbors to buy into that? How can we show them, 1, we're going to take great care of your kids. 2, we want you to be a part of this community. Don't, you know, private schools great, they have their place, I suppose, and all those, but public schools, you cannot replicate what the public schools provide. You just can't. So we as a board, where are we putting the money? So if we have to raise taxes, which I think was part of the packet, it looks like y'all put through asking for, was it 3.6 mils, which translates to certain amounts of dollars. What's it for? How do we show where we're sending the money? You know, because I think that buys credibility too, transparency. Hey, stay with us. Look, we're about to put all this money into our fine arts at Hoover, right? Hoover and Berry, right? We're about to put all this money into the fine arts program. We're about to redo, I think somewhere I saw somebody's bathroom just got redone. But it's the simple stuff, but the big stuff. And it's used, that messaging goes out. And people are like, man, Hoover's going places. Why would we go play with that? This is where we're keeping our kids. So I think it's a message on all fronts. And just being diligent and keep that message out there.
Okay, last one. In 2014, the Department of Justice and NAACP knocked on our door because of a complaint that brought the Stout case forward and brought together where Hoover was trying to achieve unitary status. However, there's certain green factors you have to achieve to get there, which I'm looking at right now, and I can tell you that even back to when we were in school, I think Hoover has achieved these for many years. Next year will be 10 years since that first interaction with the Department of Justice and with the case against Hoover. And while Hoover has poured thousands of dollars and tons of resources in proving these green factors, we don't seem to be getting anywhere. We don't seem to be getting to resolution. At what point as a board member would you get your other board members together and say, hey, look, maybe it's time we go to the judge and ask for a summary judgment and maybe appeal this or try to get an answer on this because we put so many resources and so much time toward these green factors. If we feel like we've proven them and we just want to get unitary status for our city, for the people of our city, for our students, in like manner as Vestavia, who did it in a matter of months. So I'm just curious as to what you think about that. Where is that line where you go, okay, it's time to do something, move forward?
Well, I'll be honest, when I first started doing the research around this and I saw y'all's question, it stunned me. I was surprised. I was like, wow, okay, green factors, what are these things? What are we doing? And, as you read through, you're like, okay, I think we were there for staff and faculty. I think we're there with the facilities. I think we're there with the extracurriculars. I think we're there with the transportation. And as you read more, you kind of branch out, and different people have different opinions about that. I think I want to be careful because part of when you get on the board, and one of the things I think I have to understand is no one likes to be supervised to a degree where you feel handcuffed. So I agree we want to get to unitary status as fast as possible. But I've also seen through some articles I've read, previous superintendents, they were moving in that direction as well. But it never was really clear how it kind of got stifled and why it stopped. So I'd like to know why. I agree with you from my vantage point now. We're already there, so what's the holdup? But I'd like to dig in a little bit and figure out what that is. But then let's have an honest conversation with the board members. Are we there? Can we prove we're there? Do we have the numbers to prove we're there? And what are we waiting on? What's the worst that can happen? We get told no? Okay, let's appeal it. We get told no? Okay, well, let's be proactive. How long are we going to sit here and go through the motions? Because look, at the end of the day, whether people think we are or not there, the longer we're just sitting here, it's not making anybody happy. So I would be inclined, unless y'all select me and I get on the board and like, what the heck are you thinking? This is what's really going on. So maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but I don't like to have things hanging over my head. And this feels like it's been sort of, to me, it almost feels like a bit of a black eye. I mean, like I said, I was shocked. I was a little dismayed. I was like, really? We're still dealing with this? So yes, I would be inclined to say, let's go. Next superintendent, that'd be something I'd talk about. Is like, look, as the board member, we need to figure out what's our timeline for making this, to prove our point and move forward, and then take whatever action we need to make that happen.
Chair recognizes Council President Lyda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Blair, thank you for your interest in the position and for your application. I just have one question regarding our COVID policies. We all have children in the school system like you do, and like you, we watched as our board made certain policy decisions to navigate that. And let me also say, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback the decisions, right?
Yes, it is.
When they were making these decisions, they were incredibly hard.
Indeed.
And they were incredibly emotional for this community.
Yeah.
But I'm going to ask you to give them an A through an F grade. How did our board do in terms of developing policy to help our students and teachers navigate that?
Well, I went to the open forum at Spain Park when they talked about it. I left there a little frustrated because I felt like we had a couple board members that knew what they felt and they were being very clear about it. And we had some board members that I felt were being less clear. I think when you come to a position like that, while uncomfortable, you have to make your opinions clear on it and then accept the repercussions. The board's not a political body. I think parents want us to be honest about what we think. They may disagree vehemently. I mean, I may get nasty emails, but I think I owe them that honesty. And that's really why I'm interested in this position. I think I can make decisions and help make decisions that will help our school systems be better. But if I get called on that decision and I don't have the fortitude to own up to it or to own it, well, then I'm not sure I should be on this board. So I think when it comes down to that and you have to make the tough call, that's what parents are asking us to do. They've elected y'all and y'all appoint us with the idea that we're gonna do what we think's right and then stand by that. So I left this a little frustrated, but when you said an A to an F, I will tell you I felt much better as I heard the superintendent came out, and I didn't see the behind the scenes, but when the superintendent came out and said, we're gonna do a little bit of both, I thought that was fair. Let's start, I think it was 30 days in masks. I was like, okay, we've put a line on it. I didn't want to hear, we'll review it every 6 weeks or every 4 weeks. He said a number. And then what I really liked was when they said, and we're gonna base it off metrics. What is the rate of COVID in the schools? And if we don't hit this certain rate, we're coming out of masks. And you know what? When you have something like that that's based on metrics, seems reasonable, I think parents get behind that. So I was okay with that. I was like, all right, what's 30 more days? They've committed to this. And then we watched the metrics, and the metrics tell the tale. We went out of masks, and then there was a surge. We briefly went back to masks. Metrics came down. We went out of masks. It seemed appropriate. It seemed like we took decisive action. So by the end of it, I actually was quite pleased with how we managed it. So to me, it was kind of a save. I was actually much heartened about the decision that was made on the backside as compared to where I was when I walked out of that open forum that day.
So first semester a D, second semester a B, is that what I'm hearing?
No, I'd say I'd give it a C and an A. I really did. I thought the way we finished just made a bunch of sense to me. Look, that topic was so, you almost couldn't have a reasonable conversation about it. Right. And when things get like that, it's better to almost step back, make the call, and live with your choices. And if you can bring a few metrics in there to help you make better decisions that you can actually foresee and you can track and you can understand how we got there for better or worse, that gives people confidence that there's something going on they can rely on. And once we did that, I felt like all that consternation kind of faded away. So.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Blair, I believe you have a closing statement you want to make?
Yeah, so, being on the board is something that, as I look at it now, I'm really excited about the opportunity. Graduated from W.A. Berry in 1993. Went off to the Army. Never really expected to be back in Birmingham. Once you're in the Army, they send you so many places, it's not something you think about. And then when it came time to retire and there was the opportunity to return to Birmingham, I was like, wow, this is fortuitous. This is great. You get back here and all of a sudden, your kids start in 8th grade like I did when I moved to Hoover. So you start seeing things that are weird. I actually returned to my church, Hunter Street Baptist Church. It felt like home. And for the last few years, we've been involved quite a bit. My kids play almost every sport you can imagine, except for wrestling. I mean, they do everything else: football, lacrosse, track, cross country, show choir, swimming. They're just constantly engaged. So we're always going over places trying to support these organizations. And when I heard this board position was coming open, my wife and I talked about it, and I said, I think I'm interested in doing that. I think I have something to offer. And she encouraged me to do it. I started reaching out to other people, and they said they encouraged me to do it. And as I started getting that feedback, I reached out to others. And I realized as I've done this isn't going to be an easy job, not by any stretch. And it's 5 years. That's a long time to commit to something. But I have a vested interest in these schools, not just for my kids, but for y'all's kids and for this community. Because I want Hoover to be the best it can be. And I truly do believe if our school systems don't stay strong, and we don't keep doing the best to push the edge to be the best we can be, our community at the end of the day is going to suffer. So not only what cost our kids, it's going to cost this community, and I care about this community. And I appreciate this opportunity to hopefully in the future work to make this community better. So, thank you.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Blair. We respect, as you and the other candidates have taken the big step to go into the arena and to help our children. So thank you for your time, and we wish you well.
Thank you very much. You have a good day.
Meeting's adjourned.